All statements and opinions expressed by guests of the Adult in the Room podcast are strictly their own and do not necessarily reflect the beliefs or opinions of the host, producers, or advertisers. All interviews are presented in their most complete possible form in the interests of free speech. No statements should be interpreted as financial, legal, or medical advice. Listener and viewer discretion are strongly advised.
It's the Adult in the Room podcast with Victoria Taft. That's me. Welcome to the Adult in the Room podcast with me, Victoria Taft. How are you? Well, today we are recording on Veterans Day. I'm saying recording because I have an interview that we're going to play right after this, actually. So stand by. It's going to be great. But on Veterans Day, I like to remember my dad. My dad was a wrench turner in the Air Force back in the day. He never saw combat. He was during a quasi-peaceful time in this country and in this world. And so I like to remember him on Veterans Day, as we should all remember people who put on the uniform and were willing to die for this country. So I appreciate that very much. A couple of things I wanted to show you because I have my challenge coins out back here. Okay, I'm going to pick the ones I like the most. And I'll show you. I'll show you these things just real quick. My classiest one is from the head of NORAD that I got. He handed it to me. I was like, wow, thank you. It was really neat. And then this is the commander of the 1st Air Force, dude's in charge of NORAD, just FYI. And then this one is from a friend, United States Army Command and General Staff College. And he was kind of a big deal in the Army. And then this is something I just bought. It's a souvenir, USS Arizona, which gives me entree to just this, as I remember our veterans today. These are the sands from Omaha Beach, where even generals went into combat with their troops. Now we have bunches of generals sitting in the Pentagon somewhere and taking up a lot of space and I guess getting fat, according to Pete Hegseth. Sorry. Anyway, thank you to all of our veterans who put on the uniform to help save this country and save the world. Well, I'd like to introduce you to Ty King. And Ty runs a YouTube channel called the Triple B Collective, which will be in the show notes. And this is a place where Ty talks a lot about life, what's going on in his world, music, movie excerpts, and that sort of thing. But his strong suit, and indeed the main vein through all of his videos, is his time in Antifa and how he used to run the streets and do bad things and hurt people, and how he's not doing that anymore. And I appreciate him coming on the Adult in the Room podcast. And let's see, I want to make sure I got you. I've got pictures of you. Hey, Ty, thanks so much for coming on. Appreciate it. How are you?
I'm doing good. Happy Veterans Day to everybody out there. Been a nice day so far.
Yeah. Tell me what you do with your time now.
A lot of editing, trying to, interview as many people as I can about Antifa, make videos about my time involved. I've spent the last 2 years working on Triple B, not really knowing what I was going to do going into it. I reached out to Buck Angel initially because he was just listening to a lot of people from the left who were leaving and going through a hard time. And then I just had that one interview and I was like, I could have said this, I could have said this, I could have said this, said this. Yeah. And then over the past 2 years, just over 200 videos. They're not always necessarily on Antifa, but just trying to talk to people like me going through a hard time, trying to show the world the things that I like, the music I listen to, the stories of my friends who are also involved in Antifa, and then other circles of life, like really trying to explore the psychology and the underbelly, I think, of what drives a lot of this. A lot of people are focused on like the colleges or the institutions or the workplace. But for me, I've always been very interested in the more criminal side of things. A lot of these people are coming from very dark spaces, drugs, prostitution, abusive childhoods. So that's kind of an angle that I've been very interested in trying to explore.
Yeah. What kind of people are attracted to an organization or a collective group of people like Antifa?
People who are severely...
I tell you, what were you like? And then we can expand that.
Yeah. Well, in my case, it was severely traumatized. I had a lot going on in my life. There's a million stories I could go into from that, but the same could be said for anybody else that I was involved with.
Oh, give me one of your stories. We want to know about you.
Okay. Well, for me, my childhood was rough. I got kicked out of my house at age 15 from my mother and my stepfather's house, and I was sent to
Why?
live.
Why'd they kick you out?
I was a bad kid. I was causing problems in the neighborhood. I was the kind of kid that'd go around vandalizing things, throwing things, breaking into places I shouldn't break into,
Why?
treating my friends like crap. I think a lot of it was daddy issues at the end of the day. My father wasn't around from the age of 3, and he was severely abusive. You know, there's a lot of horror stories there. Tried to kidnap me when I was age 3 or 4 from the church. Years and years of stalking me and all my family. But when I was a teenager, I didn't want to believe those stories, so I decided to reach out to him in secret via Facebook, and it seemed that he had changed. You know, in hindsight, a lot of what goes on in Antifa and a lot of these cult-like groups, I realize, is I was manipulated by my father. I was basically locked down, not allowed to have any friends, make phone calls, have no contact with my family for about 2 to 3 years. Whenever I went to live with him, I thought it was going to be the greatest situation in the world. And then it turned into hell on earth. And like I was living in a prison every day, to the point where I was contemplating murdering my own father. It got so bad.
Wow.
My father was drug addicted. He spent a lot of time smoking wet, which is embalming fluid, and a lot of other drugs. So he'd see demons. We had military operations happening in our background that was freaking him out. He was connected to different gangsters. So I kind of saw how the psychology goes with underground types as the United States was moving into further chaos. And he just became severely abusive. And, you know, he got involved with a lot of far right groups like the Aryan Brotherhood and a lot of the white boys in town. So for me, leaving my father and trying to run away from that, and then moving somewhere that was such a hotbed of Antifa activity, and we're all against racism and homophobia and Nazis and everything that I saw my father as embodying, that was a big reason why I joined. And that's a big reason why a lot of people join, actually, is very similar, if not more horrifying stories. But then there's also the contingent of people that join because they want trauma and they have no clue what real pain is.
Yeah, trauma bonds are big. People like that, they love trouble with other people. It's kind of sad, but you know, that makes them feel better, I guess. Who knows? Excuse me, can we just go back to the embalming fluid your father was inviting in?
I was just learning about this recently because I knew he was doing drugs. Well, so a lot of people would steal from the, what you call it? Not the mortuary, but the funeral homes, you know?
Sure.
And they'd have embalming fluid. And essentially what people would do is they would dip their cigarettes in it, and then they'd let it dry, and then they'd smoke it. And at least from what I've seen, because I've seen people spiral on it, including my own father, it's kind of like a fentanyl tweak. You just kind of go crazy. You start seeing shadows, hearing voices. It scared my father to death, to where it made him a darker and darker person, to the point where I came home one day and there was nothing in my room but a picture of Jesus tacked up on the wall, because he found some stuff that I was reading, like old occult books and stuff on Wicca. And he was convinced that I was summoning demons into his home, which the older I get, part of me wonders that too. But it's a very dark kind of tweak from what I've gathered.
Yeah. Wow. So you felt he was sort of in a cult, and you were sort of sucked in because you had to, by association, be in his world. And then all of a sudden, how did you break free?
Basically ran away. The day after I graduated, my aunt was willing to take me in, and I was able to move after that. But yeah, that's just such a complicated one, because he tried to come back into my life multiple times, and I tried to come back into his life, being like, maybe I was the problem, you know? And then there was always this just toxic back and forth. We'd always just wind up threatening to kill each other. He threatened to gun down my grandma, threatened to kidnap and rape X amount of relatives. And it's just, yeah. Wow. And it sounds crazy. And I guess the reason I'm willing to share it so openly too is because if you're really to look at the childhoods of a lot of the people, at least the people I rolled with in Antifa, they can tell you very similar stories. And it's not a justification for what they decide to do with it, because becoming that type of person is not the answer. But if you're looking at an origin story to where a lot of the worst members are coming from, it's really messed up situations like that.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people who end up being warriors for something oftentimes do have very chaotic backgrounds and are looking for order. And so it's kind of interesting that they end up where they end up. A lot of military vets, and they're, obviously, I believe on the good side, but Antifa on the bad side for me. Okay, so when did you finally sort of involve yourself with these people, and how did you know who they were, and how did you find them?
So it's funny because I've been talking to somebody from Eugene recently, and I guess there's some debate as to this, but at least from what's being presented to me, a lot of the Antifa activity that we're seeing in Portland actually came from Eugene, and that a lot of the Americanization of Antifa started in Eugene.
Oh, I don't doubt that for a minute. Are you aware? Let me just, before we go there, in fact, I was surprised that you were from Eugene. I thought you were from Portland, but I was happy to hear that. When I heard that, I thought, oh, this makes so much sense because, of course, in Eugene, it was the genesis of so many different kinds of leftist violent action groups. There was the Earth Liberation Front. There was the Animal Liberation Front. Some of the Earth Firsters, of course, a byplay between Portland and Eugene. It was the cradle of those movements, and they found lots of hope. They had lots of support in Eugene as well. So go ahead with your story, though.
Yeah, no, that's the thing is it's all over the place. And you mentioned the Earth Liberation Front. It's funny because in Eugene you can just smoke a joint, you could do your drugs openly, drink openly. No one's really going to give you any crap. So one night rather, I'm smoking a joint out by Walmart. This is probably about a year or two before I joined, but when I was thinking I wanted to go figure out what was going on. Mm-hmm. But there was a guy who he claimed to me that he was a part of the Earth Liberation Front and that he participated in the burning down of a car lot in Eugene back in the 90s.
Oh, yeah, I know that. It was a SUV lot. He's not in prison? I thought that dude was put in prison.
He recently got out from what he was telling me. Now, he could have been lying, but he got very detailed. But we just passed this joint back and forth. And my intention or my perspective at the time, because I was tweaking, I was a junkie, I was drunk all the time. We laughed about it.
How did you afford that? How did you afford that?
That's where all my money went. I still had a job. It's just
you did?
I didn't allocate my money properly. I was quicker to buy drugs, and then I'd always be barely making my bills month to month. And then, yeah, it's.
What kind of work were you doing? You must have been really young.
I think worked retail for a while, and then I've worked a lot of restaurant jobs. Being a dishwasher, doing freight. My first job was doing factory work for Tyson, stuff like that. Oh, so okay. I've always basically kind of had a job thing going. Most of my life I was teetering on the edge because of my bad choices with my finances.
Sure.
But a lot of people in Antifa are definitely unemployed. I just wasn't one of them.
I know that some people in Portland's Antifa are some of them are gainfully employed. They just use their night work as to go out there and raise hell. So, So back to you and Eugene then, the crucible of all things. So you got to know this dude from ELF, and then what happened?
Well, this was just one conversation. This doesn't really tie into all this. This is just like how common it is to run into somebody from that background. Because I'm a dude, I'll talk to anybody on the streets. My favorite thing to do to Eugene was where I was coming from in Texas. People weren't outside all the time like that. You didn't see hippies and art and people going around playing music. People certainly weren't smoking joints in the street. Yeah. So I had a place to live, but most of the day I was just walking all around town, taking the bus, going on adventures, meeting new people. And, it's the most common thing you'll get asked in Eugene. Hey, can I bum a smoke? Hey, can I bum a smoke?
Sure.
So I'd sit there, I'd bum a smoke, and I would just have conversations with people. I was never the type to give someone a cigarette or a joint and just walk away. It's like, no, I got a new buddy to make. So I got to meet a lot of people because of that. But you were to look at least the people that I met in that time, most of them have far left sympathies and are very supportive of that structure. Yeah. So over time, you just learn names, you learn where to go, you learn where locations are. And then 2018, when the protests were literally just happening downtown, it's important for people to know I was never an official member of Antifa. I was always seeking membership, seeking my official place, but I was a part of the Antifa movement. And I think people like me were members in our own right, especially when everybody is, there's varying different levels to it. But I was essentially trying to figure out which organization was right for me, which chapter cell was right for me. And I drifted around and I realized that after about 2 years of going around, because probably the first year is more so protest, but then as it started getting more destructive and more crazy, which thankfully Eugene did not have anywhere near close to the amount of destruction that Portland had, thankfully. But there were still some rough nights. I watched them basically all eat each other alive. They all hated each other. There was no sense of coherency. They were all just they're just so discombobulated. And in my mind, I wanted to be the better Antifa member because, they don't represent the actual movement. These people are just being foolish right now. They need to be educated on what they need to actually do. I'm the smart one. So what I would do is I would listen to music from the right. I would read Nazi literature. I'd go and look up articles online from stuff like the O9A or like actual crazy Nazi groups to be like, hey, this is, if we're going to do Nazis, like, look at this. And that scared them and it challenged them and it makes you an outsider to the cult, to where all of a sudden it's like, why would you listen to Tom McDonald? Why would you listen to that by Bryson Gray? Why would you read that book if you're not one of them? And it's like, we don't want any sort of inside knowledge as to how that's working. And they're like, no.
Because it makes it easier just to hate everybody who doesn't agree with you, right?
Basically.
Isn't that really what's going on there? Okay, so you're hanging with these people. And then eventually you sort of ingratiated yourself to them, and I assume because you're hanging with them, and you did for a couple of years, right? So what was the time frame again for you?
2018 to 2020. I think August 2020 was about when I was just like, yeah, I've had enough.
Oh, really? Really? I'd believe that you'd had enough by then. That was the George Floyd riot time. What were they doing in Eugene that disturbed you?
Picking fights with people that they didn't need to pick fights with, watching, everybody just turn on everybody. You could go out there and you could watch a white man call a black man the N-word and be surrounded by a group of black people. And instead of getting chastised, everybody just joins in. So it's like, okay, so we're not here to protect black people. Looking at what was happening in the LGBT community, I was always like, I'm going to fight for my non-binary friends. I'm going to fight for my trans friends, leave trans kids alone. And then I started educating myself because, hey, I want to look at what the other side's saying. So I'd listen to people like Blair White, Ariel Scarcella, Buck Angel, all those types of figures and look at the evidence they are presenting. And I'm like, we are butchering children. If we're really about this, we wouldn't support this. And then, of course, that makes you a freaking ultra Nazi to them.
Of course.
It's just so much over a long period of time because there's so much.
There's no introspection, it sounds like, right?
None whatsoever. And that's what the drugs help to disconnect people from because they're all on drugs.
You call Antifa the white boy jihad. And that was the first time I heard that. And it was so spot on as far as I was concerned, because these are people who still involve themselves in things that they have to drug themselves up to do the awful things they do and then stand back. And of course, now they've got blood on their hands and or on their hearts, dark hearts, and are sort of sucked in forever. What did you do?
Like, what did I do in terms of?
Yeah, I mean, like, you're there, you're hanging with these people, you're thinking you're going to educate them, but you had to, in order to ingratiate yourself, you had to do some stuff for them and with them, right?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I did, because I had different groups of people, right? I had my neighbors that I rolled with, and I went with them on a lot of occasions. And then I'd occasionally meet up with people from downtown. There's a whole downtown sphere aspect to it where a lot of the funding comes from the local bars, and they have people under them essentially that go out and they participate at the higher levels. They took a liking to me. I had a friend who I went out with who I think she was probably working under them and not telling me, but I would walk around with a bucket, taking donations and stuff like that. You just become their useful idiot, basically. But in terms of like violence, I always dressed up. I had my black mask. I wore my black clothes, my jacket. I always had a giant machete. I had brass knuckles. I had a hunting knife. I might have a pocket knife. I'd have pepper spray and always go out there. And
did you go out at night or in the day? Or was that all day long?
Both, but I definitely went out at night.
Mm-hmm. What were you guys doing? Direct actions and such, right?
For me, it was just more so sitting there, just kind of looking intimidating, like trying to show force, like, hey, if they're going to be out there with their weapons, we're going to be out here with ours. Even though realistically, when we had a night where the feds popped off and everything went down, guys like me, we ran for the hills. So it's like.
What happened that night?
So that was one of the nights. This would have been May 30th of, I believe, 2020. I have the date
right after George Floyd.
Yeah. I got this here, but it's a day off because I'm drunk. I was drunk and bad with dates. But basically, it's ACAB. I kind of had it flipped to represent Arkham Asylum because it's all kind of a madhouse, and then the date and the time. But they gave us 3 minutes at sorry, triangle it there, 10:57, and they gave us a 3-minute countdown to essentially get back to our homes. We didn't have time for that, so we got caught up in the middle of LRADs and rubber bullets being fired, and people being traced, drones in the sky. Some guy tried to ram us in his car. But I don't want to focus too much on that because we did.
Oh, I do. No, I want to talk about that because it tells me the extent to which you were involved, so that gives people an idea of what you were doing.
Well,
you say you were sort of
away from that, but the reason that it happened is just the thing I want to put in there is because what happened May 29th, because it's a very important part. That's whenever Antifa got all over DC and they stormed the White House and they set the White House lawn on fire and Trump was locked down in the bunker. So that was an activation point for everybody all across the country because in our heads we're like, oh my God, it's finally happening. So what they tried to do the next day is they set COVID lockdowns all over the country to corner off certain areas to kind of control the protest, which is a move I don't agree with the COVID lockdown aspect of it, but it's what happened. So the edge of ours was, do you know where the Whole Foods is in Eugene?
No.
Oh, okay. There's the Whole Foods and it's right next to the federal courthouse. That was the cutoff line for curfew. So basically, whenever Antifa pushed its boundaries and they went towards Whole Foods, then they were met with guns and there was like a parade of federal vehicles. But this was also like one of the first times that Trump set the feds into Oregon when he was first having the idea of labeling them domestic terrorists. So it wasn't actually much of the police force so much as like these were like federal agents.
They were the feds. Yeah. Interesting. Because not only did that happen in DC, I just actually did my Perplexity AI graph. I can pull it up too. I will actually, of all of the DC stuff going on around that time, because of course now they're saying that Antifa was, the story's always been Antifa was never at the January 6th protest when everybody knows they were. And of course they were. And the other thing is that now, of course, now we're finding out that, sure they were. And how in heaven's name would you miss something like that? I'll just do this real fast, okay? I just put it in one of my stories.
And what I want to say too, one of the reasons that I know Antifa was at January 6th, all the Antifa channels on Facebook that I were following was saying January 6th, day of chaos, set your alarms, watch out, the fascists are going to take over. And I woke up to January 6th, and then the next day, all the posts were gone.
Oh, interesting. Well, of course, now every time there's any response by the feds to anything being done by the far left, it's always, there's going to be military in the streets and Trump's going to take over. Listen, if Trump were going to take over, he would have done it by now. And and you're not going to believe this. He didn't do a thing about that in his first 4-year term. So isn't it funny? You'd think that he'd established that martial law people keep telling us about back then. But anyway, so you have the post-election. Remember, I don't know if you remember in 2016, this was actually 2017 after the inaugural, there were post-election scrums on the street. Antifa's activated. And this is well before the election, 6 months before the election. And that's when we really started seeing people hitting the streets. Then we've got the post-inaugural Antifa violence against Trump supporters. That's when Rand Paul was beaten up again. His wife threatened. There were other people. There were cars set on fire. People at an inaugural event on Capitol Hill. I think it was at the White House, actually. And then we have lots of different peaceful protests. 2018, there were in Portland, there were violent protests, but this is only a DC list, right? And then we have consistent political protests with low violence, BLM protests in 2020, which is when you were active, church burning, Lafayette Square clearing, Trump taken to the bunker, and then in DC, Capitol riot, etc. So there was plenty of stuff going on there for people to say that this was the only riot that Antifa never went to, which was the January 6th situation at the Capitol complex. They've got to be, they're smoking whatever that stuff your dad was smoking because they're crazy if they don't think that was happening. So, okay. So here you are hanging out with some pretty rough characters. You lived with a rough character, your dad, right? So, and he was involved with some pretty shady dudes. So here you are. how did you do your, let's say, your first direct action with the Eugene cell of Antifa? How did you
Well,
find out about it?
yeah.
Where were you? What was it?
Like I said, direct action for me, that was more of a concept that I would read and like listen to things about and that they'd educate you on the streets on, because I never found my own chapter or cell necessarily. I would just see things going on and then I would just try to go on and help. A lot of the time I'd want to de-escalate, but if things were really violent and if I were super intoxicated, then, there was instances of like, at one point there's a parade of officers coming for us and we're ripping down construction sites and we're trying to create barriers in the road so they can't come through. And then you have to pick up stones and launch it in their direction to try to get them to back off, which just want to be very clear on this. Never hit a cop, never hit an officer. I threw over, still threw stones. Not good. But, and then I'm sitting here, I'm a guy in my weapons. And then it's just like, sometimes if you don't want a certain group of people coming through and it looks like people are forming a wall or a barrier, well, then a guy like me can just cross my arms and I just go over and I just stand with them to make it look like their numbers are bigger. People smashing up things. There was one moment the Chase Bank got smashed up in downtown Eugene, and I was just kind of there and I instinctually put my arms up with everybody else. And then I remember walking away from that one being like, what, why? Why? Because I'm sitting here being like, we need to be smarter than this, but also
because they're capitalists.
Yeah, because for a second I'm like, yeah, fuck Chase Bank. I don't want him to get in trouble because they're chasing him with a phone. And I'm just like, oh, this person's going to get doxxed. Then their life's going to be in danger. When in reality, it's like they're smashing up downtown. Like they should probably figure that out. Like it's, just a lot of moments like that. But I'd get in and then I'd be like, what am I doing? Basically. But it doesn't negate any of my participation. I don't want to make it seem like I'm downplaying any of this at all.
Right.
Like I want to be here and be open about it because I want other people to come forward and be able to say what they did too.
Sure, I know.
Because more people need to.
I saw your interview with Scrub, and I found that fascinating. And we'll play an excerpt from it in just a minute. But I just thought it was a really well done show of yours, and enjoyed it highly. And but what were they saying? What did they say was the impetus, the reason why they were hurting people and breaking things?
We had to fight fascism. Donald Trump was taken over. Anytime anybody stood up for their business, anytime anyone stood up against COVID lockdowns, anytime anyone stood up against any policy that was democratic or from the Democrat side, the left side.
Yeah.
It's
which in Oregon it all is. So yeah.
Yeah. So to oppose that structure at that point, they saw you as being in bed with the Nazis, which as someone who's been talking to more far right people lately because of what I've been doing, which has been very fun and very enjoyable. Like people out there probably think I'm becoming a Nazi, but like, no, I'll talk to people who are moderate and conservative and then super, super far right. And they all have the same beliefs, because what I'm realizing with a lot of these far right figures is they don't necessarily want the fascist dystopia. They just see as there's only two options right now. But what a lot of them seem to want is to maintain the current American structure that we have so that we don't fall into that reality.
Yeah, so that's why they call them conservatives, to serve. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. But I think it's like, so like you'd have people from like the far right and then they would come to conservative rallies and vice versa. But for people on the far left like me, we'd look at that and it's like, oh my God, they're buddying up. They're best friends now. So everybody's becoming a Nazi. And then, of course, you'd have people in Antifa who I would just see this all the time on the news. I'm not sure if it ever happened in real life for me, but you'd have Antifa going around and they would be like doing Nazi salutes on the other side or waving swastikas. Like
what?
That was a tactic that was happening throughout the years. I can't think of many specifics, but it's.
Are you saying that some Antifa people did that to poison? Okay, got it. Because that happened at the Tea Party stuff too.
Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of them did at J6. I think a lot of Antifa members were there, and they were dressed as conservatives. Like,
I do too.
It's
I do too.
Something in colors.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of proof actually. It's and a lot of it's coming out right now, which is pretty shocking. Okay, so they say what their central belief system was? Was it just? How did they say anti-capitalism, which I assume was because they're commies, right? By that time, they were full communist, right?
There's some debate to that. And even I kind of wonder, because when I started going to the protests and all this was happening, there wasn't that many hammer and sickles. there wasn't that much overt communism. But as the chaos came through and more people began to go away, I noticed that type of symbolism was coming in much, much harder. In my interview with Brother Scrub, like you mentioned, he believes that Black Bloc was started under very different conditions and that he believes he saw the Marxist elements come in and take over. So it's very likely that there were aspects of Antifa that were trying to do the right thing. Not saying they're good, but I think that there are some outside or even just internal ideological forces that came in and saw it as, if we can get into this, then we have an army. And I think I might have seen some of that in my time. Because as stupid as it is, as evil as Marxist is, there is a lot of people in Antifa getting to it with good intentions. But kind of like, you know, the story of me and my father, a lot of my friends are Antifa. It's, you're bringing in people that are very, very easy to fall for cult manipulation tactics.
Sure, yeah.
Just a little bit of empathy, a little bit of faux, like, hey, me too. I've been there. You know, I'll be your friend. You don't seem to have any right now. That goes a very, very long way.
Yeah.
And I think that there was definitely a lot happening in the shadows that I would like to know more about in time, but it gets very dicey on that situation. I don't remember what the initial question was.
Well, I was just thinking the same thing. I think we just wanted to know how they amplified what their central message was, which appeared to be, some anti-capitalism. I've spoken with several anarchists who were all part of that milieu, but they were part of it in 2016, I think before the turn. But I will say this, in all of the Portland leftist activist groups, there have always been a strain of communism through them. And so my guess is, as Antifa actors in Portland go to Seattle and Seattle comes to Portland, Antifa actors in Portland go to Eugene and Eugene come to Portland. You know, it's a very symbiotic. Yeah, exactly. They do cross-pollinate. They are each other. But I would say that things really started getting serious, I would say, during takeovers of public property on Occupy Wall Street in 2010-11. And that was during the Obama administration. People felt real comfortable doing that. And of course, whenever there would be an Antifa direct action thereafter, it would always be involving taking over their favorite park and that sort of thing. So,
and I want to say on that too, I did meet a lot of people there, not people that I knew too personally, but people that were a part of the Occupy movement. A lot of those people within the first year of my being a part of that, they left pretty damn quick. Like whenever a lot of them saw what was going on, even with all of that, I think a lot of them were terrified and they were like, something's
not right. No, in fact, on the Mike Strickland story, I told you a little bit about that in 2016, where he pulled a gun on a bunch of people who had already beaten him, and then they came back and he pulled his gun. He just drew it. He didn't fire it. And then he, of course, was the one put in jail. But in research for that story, that series of reports on the Adult in the Room podcast, when it was audio only, I talked to a lot of anarchists who didn't involve themselves with this at all anymore. And they were they were the guys that started it, and they said, we're not no. I mean, of course, they're going to tell me, what am I? I'm just somebody caretaking a story. But I mean, I felt that it rang true to me. So kind of interesting. So what kind of characters did you run into? What were the women like, for example, in Antifa in Eugene during 2018 to 2020?
It's going to sound very critical, but it's just the truth. As far as a lot of the women I knew personally, and being a gay guy, I've hung out with more women often than not. Like I have more girlfriends than I do guy friends. Very border personality, border person. So I drank so much coffee today. My words are just.
I know. Have you ever had one of these Celsius things? Oh my
God, I hate them. I hate them.
There's so much caffeine in there.
The worst part is I'm trying to stop caffeine. So whenever I have a little bit, it goes a long way now.
Yeah.
But they're very personality disordered. A lot of them are very egotistical, very narcissistic. A lot of them get very mad when you psychoanalyze them and try to point out their problems. Yeah. You have the standard drug and alcohol addiction, but this is something that's very important because I don't want to sit here and just make it seem like I'm dehumanizing or talking crap. A lot of them have been victims of rape, incest, abuse. A lot of them, the culture in Eugene, like guys can be sleazy in general. I get that. But up there, Eugene is very, very rapey. Very, very rapey. And the girls,
Rapey?
it's yeah.
Wow.
It's I've seen like things with my own eyes, like girls just getting stalked on the streets. They can't half these girls can't go out anymore without a horror story. So the girls in Antifa, I noticed, they're trying to overcome that fear, overcome that anxiety, become the soldiers for the other women and people in their community who are also dealing with a lot of craziness. But it's kind of how a lot of guys fight their fathers in Antifa. It's really a lot of daddy issues. I think a lot of these women, they have the idea of the oppressor in their mind as being like, that's where a lot of the toxic masculinity comes from, a lot of that type of talk. A lot of them have gone through a lot of sexual trauma, and they see Antifa as a way to become a soldier, to where they can be perceived as, it's just like it's a protection blanket, I think is the best way to put that.
In Portland, I see a lot of women, and as according to Chandler Patey, the guy who rents the house that is their safe house near the ICE headquarters, they're all sex workers there. So,
and a lot of them have horror stories, and it's. I'm not going to sit here necessarily and slam sex work. Prostitution. There's a whole thing. It's
not good for
more
you.
Conservative I become, the more I question it, I think. But
it's not. How about this? How about just keeping it simple? It's not good for you.
It's not. It's really not. You can make a lot of money for sure, and that's how a lot of the girls in Antifa fund themselves. But it's like at what cost? Because one person, the one that I was telling you, I did little bucket donations for, who she said it was going to a jail bond. Hell if I know. But she was a sex worker and, identified as non-binary, very, very angry. Her mother had committed suicide years before, and that destroyed her deeply. And as much anger as I have in my heart for this person for a myriad of reasons, I also can understand. But they were doing sex work. This is how sad this was. So I was there because they're like, hey, I just want to make sure that I'm safe around this guy and, just stay close in case anything happens. And I'm like, you know what? I got you. I'm going to go hang out upstairs with your partner. So their partner, male, female identifying, female or non-binary identifying, but guy, is sitting there broken, playing with Legos on the floor while I'm trying to be quiet. They're both at least in their 30s, while I'm listening to my friend get railed downstairs for $1,000.
Wow. That's so sad.
Yeah, and she'd be like, I can buy you supplies, and I can help you with this, and I can help you with this, and I was just kind of like, let's just hang out. But no, a lot of characters like that, and a lot of sad stories like that, to where it's like, how would that not destroy you?
Of course, it destroys your soul. It takes a part of your soul. Let's just real quick. I want to play for you a vignette from the recent meeting about Antifa in Washington, D.C. And this is one of my previous guests, Seamus Bruner, who talks about his work in finding out who contributes to and supports Antifa.
Know that this is not just a story about violence and chaos, as you alluded to, Mr. President. This is a money story. And at the Government Accountability Institute, my colleague and I, Peter Schweitzer and our team, we followed the money, and we followed it to the top of what we call the protest industrial complex, Riot Inc. And we found a network of NGOs. It's not just the Soros Network, the Open Society Network, it's other funding networks, the Arabella Funding Network, the Tides Funding Network, Neville Roy Singham and his network, Foreign Cash. And it's also big left-wing funders. Some of them are not citizens of this country. Mr. Hans-Jörg Wyss of Switzerland. Yeah, that guy. They're pouring money into this entire ecosystem. And so I want to share 3 money facts with you about what we call Riot Inc. Number 1, like any corporation, Riot Inc. has many divisions. It doesn't just have the Antifa boots on the ground division. It has PR divisions. It has marketing divisions. It has a very well-funded legal division to get these boots on the ground back on the streets as quickly as possible. But it does have those investors that I mentioned. Number 2, we have identified dozens of radical organizations, not just the decentralized Antifa organizations, but dozens of radical organizations that have received more than $100 million from the Riot Inc. investors. These would be the lawyer groups. These would be the groups that advocate for calling good, honest Americans fascists, et cetera. And then 3, I think the most shocking thing is that we have found that more than $100 million in U.S. taxpayer funding has flowed into these funding networks, including at least $4 million to these very groups themselves, not just Antifa types, but there was an event in Atlanta called Stop Cop City. Over 60 rioters were charged with domestic terrorism. These groups received money for that from both the billionaire class as well as taxpayer money. So one other thing, this money helps fund the decentralized crowdfunding platforms.
Yes, it does.
These are ways that Antifa, the John Brown Gun Club of Elm Fork, which had links to that attack on the ICE facility, the Socialist Rifle Association, and just because they don't have LLCs or EIN numbers doesn't mean they can't get paid. Some of these funding platforms, crowdfunding platforms, are funded by this network.
Yeah, that's it. What do you think of when you hear that? Do you ever see any evidence of that?
Yep, and I'm sitting down to talk with the feds this week about that, actually, because
talk to me about that. What do you mean you're talking to the feds?
So there was a millionaire downtown business owner that was offering to pay our bail should anything happen. I never got arrested. I never accepted bail. I sat on this for a long time because part of me was just like, this person's rich, had rich parents. So maybe I'm just looking too much into this. Let me just focus on the other Antifa stuff and just think about it. And what actually activated me to this is the same reason that everybody's familiar with the name Chandler, is I saw that Valley Ray interview on the street where he's like, his name is Chandler. Everybody poops at Chandler's. And he started describing the structure and what they are doing. And I was like, that's everything this business owner was doing for us. So I started looking into it. And we're kind of looking at the same thing. They tanked their business, claiming to go broke. And then somehow were able to secure multi-million-dollar donations for real estate ventures in Eugene. And we're looking at where that money may have potentially be coming from. And it's looking like they could have been getting in bed with these NGOs and local charities.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
And
I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that for a second.
Will you be able to cut this part if I say it, or should I just zip it for a moment?
I will not be able to cut this. I prefer
we'll
that
talk
you didn't
after.
say.
Well, I'll let you know one fun fact about that after.
Yeah, I'd love to know. Yeah, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk. We'll talk later. Okay. Yeah, so it's not only, it's not as if somebody's cutting checks and going, you get a check and you get a check. What they're doing is, and what we've seen happen time and again, is that first of all, the Lawyers Guild is always there to provide free lawyers and sue anybody who lays a hand on them. And then of course and they get damages. Antifa sues for damages, sues, even though it could be the dumbest thing in the world. In a place like Eugene and Portland, they are likely to get paid out. So they make money that way too. And then in addition to that, people have, for example, one woman who is a lifer, at least since 2018, at every protest and has gone to jail numerous times, has used the GoFundMe to make thousands upon thousands of dollars. She's a disabled veteran and she has limited income, but she does all kinds of things on GoFundMe. And who do you think gives that money to GoFundMe? People with means. And they don't have to say who they are on GoFundMe. They don't have to say who they are at all. So it could be one of those NGOs getting money from Soros groups or Arabella or what have you, or and higher up on the pecking order.
Yep. And a thing too that I learned with the NGOs, I think it was from watching Andy Ngo on Tim Pool, or not the NGOs, sorry, like the Lawyers Guilds and all that.
Yes.
That's how they're getting the doxing information, is because these are the people who can go pull up your entire life story. So they're also using them for that.
I think that's true. And I know Honey Badger Mom, who's being sued by one of these Antifa people because she sprayed her as she stood there ready to hit her with her flagpole, which, by the way, are metal and they are weapons. So they just want they're suing her for $10,000, which is not that much in the whole sort of scheme of things. But they're not doing it in small claims court. No, they're doing it in big boy court, so they get all kinds of discovery. Tell me about the weaponry you saw, by the way.
It always kind of changed. The more extreme days, there'd be more guns. A lot of people concealed carried. A lot of people didn't want you to know that they were carrying. Like I said, I had my knives, my brass knuckles, my pepper spray. most people I knew always try to have one weapon on them. And even some of the girls I knew, I like would give them pepper spray or even a knife at the very least, not for like hurting anybody, but because it could get fucking rough. And I was just like, hey, just protect yourself. This is a dangerous situation we're going into. But a lot of that, there's more guns than people would think. They just don't like to show it because a lot of them, they'll still like in their personal life, they'll champion the anti-gun thing because really at the end of the day, that's just going to come down
They're
on the
all
other
strapped.
side. A lot of them are strapped, and it's not always necessarily legal either.
Sure.
So, yeah.
I mean, they have their gun clubs now. Of course, John Brown Gun Club and the Socialist Rifle Association and that sort of thing. So they've got their gun clubs and they do train. Did you ever seek any training or see anyone or hear of anyone who was getting training on the outside?
I've heard of it, and that's part of the reason I was like looking for a chapter because like I tried to join Black Bloc, but they were too paranoid for me. So I was just like, in hindsight, I'm very grateful that I didn't. But in my head, I was like, if I wind up there, then I'll get to see the training because I wanted to see how deep that went. But I just never made it past a certain threshold. Well,
and I think it seems to me that you could just block up and, you're a Black Bloc. I didn't realize there was a sub gang within Antifa. I just thought everybody did that.
Well, they put out calls to action. They want you to dress the same. That way you can blend. So that way they can't always be identified. And sometimes they'll invite you to come near. Hey, come join, lock arms, do this, do this. But from what I gathered looking at it, it's a smaller group of people that are actually probably hanging out like all the time.
Yeah. So those guys are probably the ones. Well, usually they'll send the guys up in the Teletubby outfits and like these people. Here we go. Woo! Those people are distractions. Those are not actual. I mean, sure, they're probably Antifa, but obviously they're there in support of Antifa. But they're there to distract from other things that the Antifa folks are doing down the street, it seems to me. But what do I know?
And to instigate anger from the right, because in their head it's just F the conservatives, F daddy, F God. There are people on the far right that are very, 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 very psychologically damaged the same way many people are on the far left. And it just reminds me of the Civil War movie where they talk about the whole Marxist Antifa slaughter in Portland. In my head, those are the kids that get shot first. That's the scary part. And that's what I don't want to see because those kids have no idea what they're actually playing in. They're making themselves targets. They're putting their face all over. You have that stupid kid out there in the chicken suit making an ass of himself in front of the city council. They don't know the others. There's a lot of people on the super, super far right that are ready to gun down these people who do not see the difference between the different levels of Antifa. These kids are putting themselves in a very dangerous situation, and they're making it look like a party that all the kids can come play at. That actually scares me to watch.
It's a psyop. I mean, they're doing it on purpose so that the city council woman from Portland can say, "See, they're just having fun. See, it's really not that big of a deal." And all the time, see, I just want you to note something. Is this these guys in? Yeah, here we go. See that? They're all in front of the driveway of the ICE headquarters, preventing ICE vehicles from ingress or egress. That's what they're doing. This is not.
And these aren't going to be the kids with weapons either. There's not going to be a 9mm, maybe a pocket knife. These kids they can't defend themselves in any situation.
Well, I mean, I don't think they're, not nothing. I think that I think you're right in terms of most of these people being armed. And what do you think you can hide under that little chicken suit? Come on, man. There's a bunch of stuff there. I'm not here to indoctrinate you. I just want to find out from you what's going on.
No, you're good. It's just wild to see.
What'd you say?
It's just wild to see.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So your personal story. So you were, can you figure out and tell me things that you've heard about Antifa in the media or this, sort of this universe of websites and such, including me, that people saying things about Antifa that are wrong?
That's wrong in the media?
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to say wrong. I just think people are really misinformed, which is why I'm trying to step forward and find others, is because even a guy like me, I'm really misinformed on a lot of things and I need to learn because of the cult tactics that they use, because they've made it so just all over the place. It makes it hard for people to learn. But I think everybody's kind of right in their own ways. But, I'll look at people like, I love breaking points. Like, my husband's a liberal, I'm a conservative, and I voted Trump. So, like, we don't listen to too many of the same politics, but we like breaking points because of the whole Crystal Sager dynamic. And one thing that I could say disappoints me on that front is Crystal Ball and her take on it. She kind of just completely falls for the cult ideology, and she's looking at it surface level, like, oh, they're just an idea, they're not a real thing. All this other stuff you hear, they're not a real thing, like they're not an organization, this, that. It's just cult mantras. But I think that people
or laziness.
because it's complicated, right? You have so many people that they're devoted to the literature and they're devoted fully to all the spaces and they're just in it 24/7. You have guys like me who I was in it, but I was over here because I thought I had something to contribute from the outside. And then you have people who just love it because they think the memes are funny or they want to go out and take a selfie. So it's just like all these different levels of indoctrination create a cultural structure really to where, one of the things I thought prior is that Antifa should be labeled as a gang because I thought it wouldn't set them off. It would be a good way to tackle it. And then maybe there could be a conversation in the country about gang violence and these different types of groups and try to get the youth to steer away from that, discourage them from waving the flags and getting the tattoos and all that. Because I knew whenever they got labeled as domestic terrorist, it was just going to go off the hammer. Like, whenever Trump just touted the idea the first time, I said, if they're going to call you domestic, or if they're going to call you a terrorist, be the best damn terrorist you can be. Now, in my head, I was not thinking that I was the terrorist. I was thinking, I don't know what I was thinking. It was very, your thoughts and your words don't always match up with your reality when you're in that space, but you're leaning into that more and more as the declaration is made. But I think that one thing that I just want people to understand is to try and find the nuance in the different levels of it, because you label all of them as terrorist, we're fucked. We're fucked. Everybody's grandkids are going to get arrested. Kids are going to get arrested. All the old MSNBC ladies that are just thinking that they're fighting against fascism and tweeting something online, they're going to get arrested. And worse, if there's a pendulum swing and we go blue again, then the Proud Boys and groups like that are going to be labeled as terrorists too. So that's also
they already have been. So I mean, what's new? You know what I'm saying? I mean,
are they a terrorist group?
No, they're not a terrorist group. They haven't been labeled. I not officially labeled that, but what I would say is that the left calls them fascists and terrorists themselves. So
yeah,
how did you get to the point where you left the left? What happened? What was that moment? I mean, I have one for me, so I want to know yours.
So for me, it wasn't really a moment. It was just a long process of, I didn't know how to walk away. I didn't know how to stand in my own truth, to stand up for myself in a lot of ways. I always let people use me and trample me. And I always gave up all of myself for other people, never taking the time to focus on me, which is something I'm still trying to learn.
People pleaser.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's like that's why I have so many stories to share on the channel, is because I could break it down to like just 1,000 things. I can never land on one specifically. I feel like anytime anyone asks me, I land on a different one, because it was just a long drawn out toxic relationship with the far left. And I just took so much crap. I was willing to dish out so much crap and be that type of person. And, I think that's the thing about me. And I think it's going to be the same for a lot of people, is a lot of this generation, we're so mentally broken, coming out of a space where we're doing drugs and drinking constantly, engaging in all these toxic cultures, that for a lot of people that are going to come out, there's going to be a variety of reasons. There's going to be a variety of horror stories, which is why I'm trying to figure out maybe something I could do outside of podcasting in the future to like try to figure out how I could offer resources to people like that, because you're willing to stick in for so long, despite how evil it is, despite all the evidence to the contrary that what you're doing is wrong, the things you're supporting are evil, that it's not just even necessarily leaving. I had to like deprogram myself. I had to like make it a point. Okay, you're scared of this person. You need to listen to this person. You need to sit down. Okay, you can listen to Nazis. That's fine. Okay, now we're going to listen to a person in this sphere. Now we're going to listen to a person in this sphere. They say this person's a Nazi. We're going to listen to them now. It's like I just had to start practicing doing all the things that they were saying not to do, because that's what they're trying to strip society of, is our enjoyment of these things. That's why they corrupt everything. That's why everything is just political garbage. That's why Hollywood's gone to crap. They want to just drag us down, and they don't want us to enjoy. They want to like break the interconnectivity that we all have, essentially. And I felt like the way
shared values.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where we get the interconnectivity. Where you go, oh, we're all Americans, or whatever, you know, that. And instead, we're fascists and they're terrorists. So, I mean, I will accept my part in some of that, but I've also don't have any. I will brook no terrorism activities on the part of people against nice people either. I will not tolerate somebody calling people who have political viewpoints other than their own a Nazi or a fascist. That is just unacceptable. You know, and it's the old Godwin's law. Once you bring up Hitler, you've lost the argument, and they've totally lost the argument. But anyway, so you started deprogramming yourself because you saw this as a cult more than anything. When did you finally realize, oh, dude, this is not good. This is a cult?
I think when I realized how much of a cult it was, because I knew it was, but like as I was getting out,
like, how did you know it was a cult though? I mean, what was cultic like about it?
Just the abuse patterns, telling you that you can and can't speak to certain people, that you can and can't speak on certain things, that there's different tiers, that you're not able to ascend to the next level until you've like essentially gone through this process. It's if you were to look at just any standard breakdown of a cult, if you were just type in what is a cult on YouTube,
yeah, certain steps,
it's all there. It's just all there. And whenever I went on the Disaffected podcast with Joshua Slocum, and I had a guy reach out to me through email, and that guy was my buddy Cyprian, who I now do a show called These People Are Idiots with. And he's been Scientology as a way to understand Marxism, because he was born in communist Romania. So the more he talks about cults, and he has like, you know, this, he's way smarter than I am. But he brings up all these different examples, and I'm always just like, yeah, it's like Antifa.
Yeah, well, that's true. Also, there's a lot of attention paid to the occult by Antifa, correct? Did you see that? Or like you mentioned Wicca and all sorts of other things when you were a kid. Did you find some of that as you went along with these fellow travelers in Antifa?
I found it with everybody that I was basically hanging out with personally.
Really? In what way? What happened?
So I'll frame some of it through my perspective. So everybody that I rolled with, for the most part, had their varying different entities and paganistic practices. Me, I was just kind of on the more chaotic side of things. I love doing acid, psychedelics, mushrooms, various different drugs. I could tell you how different drugs affected my psyche, and I was always trying to program results. And for me, I was entity seeking. You know, I was looking for the elves, the demons, the jesters. I wanted to talk with things in mirrors. I wanted to make contact because I knew that there's some sort of magic in this world that do certain things, channel certain emotions, draw certain symbols. You can try and do these things. Though me, like many other people, we thought we were educated in what we were doing, but we weren't. So, and obviously I'm not saying this is for everybody in Antifa, but in Eugene in particular, the people I was hanging out with, a lot of them were getting into these practices. So we all had our different idols. Mine was Thoth. I thought I was communicating with Thoth. So you're getting into this and you're reading all this stuff about these deities and you're getting deeper and deeper into it. And for me, if you were to boil down what my worship was, because it certainly wasn't God, I worship time and space. You know, the idea of all time being present at once, understanding your place within the universe, astral projections, stuff like that, stuff that just you go out of this world, because that's just how shitty my life became. I didn't want to be in this world anymore. Yeah. You know, I was suicidal, but I didn't want to necessarily kill myself. So let's just go further and further down this road. And when you start going down it, it's nice and fluffy. And the same can be said for a lot of people that I was doing this with. But then it gets very, very dark along the line. And then you start.
What did that look like?
Ego. You think you're absolving your ego at first. You think you've transcended everybody else. And you're just like, oh, it's all about absolution and peace and love. And we're all one. But then people like me and the people I roll with, we got further and further into the ego as opposed from pulling back into it. and our lives became toxic as a result. And a lot of people, myself included, are like, why is my life falling apart? Why is this happening? Why am I constantly feeling like this? Why am I so sick? Why do I feel like this when I wake up? Why are my nightmares like this? But still thinking that you have all the answers. So you lean in and you lean in. And then, of course, if you're an Antifa, it's all this hail Satan, F God type stuff constantly. So that makes you feel encouraged. And, you start summoning literal shadows, and then stuff starts happening in your home that happened on multiple occasions. And there is also an element of blood that goes into it. A lot of people I knew, myself included, had some sort of blood sacrifice, which there's a breakdown of psychological barriers when that happens. I can't list all that out of my head, but you're essentially destroying yourself as you're actively participating in this movement that's destroying your community.
Was it beyond cutting, or what was it?
Depends on who you talk to. I knew people that would cut into jars and then piss in them and drinking it during a ritual. For me, it was slicing up my body, trying to get pain threshold because childhood trauma, trying to reenact. People are thinking like, oh, this is bad shit at this point. My life's crazy. There's no soft side to a lot of my stories. But, I share these stories not to shame these people, because I want society to be more aware of them, so that there's a way out for people. There has to be avenues for deliverance and just getting out of that space. At least if you're not going to find God or Christianity or anything like that, just pulling back from the darkness at the very least is what a lot of people need. And I've seen so many people in Antifa get broken like this, myself included, to where, the night that I really truly decided to leave Antifa, I'll say, where I put up a lot of my stuff in a closet, I had a psychedelic experience, and I'd already kind of made the decision to walk away. I tell this story in depth on my channel. It's one I've been trying to evaluate as time goes on, but I saw a gray reptilian in a white hood with Joker face paint. And there's a whole experience that went down there. Cause like I said, I was always entity seeking. And what I came to realize in time, especially as I had a deliverance prayer, as well as an exorcism, that this was my demon. And a lot of people are seeing their demons. They're seeing horrible, horrible things. Yeah, you look at Portland and you look at aspects of downtown Eugene and all these different cities, and you'd be like, this is hell on earth. This is just atrocious. Now mix in psychedelics and the fact these people are actually seeing devils and demons and hearing voices in their head. When a guy like me, when I read Revelation, I see it through a very different light now. Like, yes, this is all happening under the veil of our reality. And a lot of people are very, very privy to it and can feel it physically, because they're literally drawing themselves closer to that darkness, but also bringing the darkness back into their reality with them. So it's like, it takes the hellscapes and it just makes it so much worse and so much more existential. And I've watched people snap, myself included.
What'd you do when you snapped?
Started talking in tongues, having time jumps in my head where I'd think I was in a different year, forgetting how to speak, unable to write things, just winding up in random places of town, talking to shadows. Like, it's tweaker behavior. Like, basically when you're going and you're seeing a tweaker and they're just going on about their crazy, that's probably what they're doing. Yeah. Just walking through hell.
That's walking through hell, friend. That's walking through hell. Let's take an excerpt of your discussion, if you don't mind. I hope I'm not keeping you too long, but
oh no, I'm down for whatever.
Okay. Here is your discussion with Brother Scrub, on your podcast on the Triple B Collective, and
they're lying. They just want theirs.
Yep.
They claim they don't want kings. They're lying. They just want theirs. And I'm looking at it going, the only king that I will ever kneel to is Christ. There is no king above me. No man is greater than me. Everyone is my equal, whether they like it or not.
You ratified that, and that dude was hardcore. He was Black Bloc. He was years in Portland, and then was basically excommunicated from the cult.
He was more really Antifa than I was.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. He was like part of the gang, and you were on the outside of the gang a little bit, and then just sort of pinpointed your way in. So, okay. So there was another excerpt. I won't play it here, but I want everybody to go look at this interview. When you talk about pro-life. You talked about Christ. What happened to you?
What was that last part? You cut out a little bit.
What happened to you to change your mind like that? Because, like here you are talking pro-life, you're talking about Christ, and did you find Jesus? What happened?
Yeah, and I think it happened somewhere along the podcast, because whenever I started the podcast, I just claimed I was an omniist. I'm like, there's truth to all things. A lot of things are interconnected. All things can be true at once. But, along the way, trying to lean more into the Bible and because a lot of it, when I first started talking about Christianity and all that on the channel, I wanted, if people came in from Antifa, that they could see a different side of it. Because I did believe in God. I did believe in a higher power. I just didn't necessarily consider myself a Christian, because I'm like, I don't want to disrespect Christianity by coming and claiming something that I'm not actively practicing.
Oh, that you got to get rid of that, dude, because obviously God's bigger than that. So, I mean, if St. Paul became a Christian, you could become a Christian. He was a damn terrorist. Keep going.
Yeah, no, it's true. And, but yeah, just over time, but I was also, while I was doing that, I was also still tinkering with the occult in some aspects.
Sure.
And, I had a good friend, Larry Bollinger, he was a good friend, a neighbor of me before my time in Antifa. And he was always kind of a voice of reason in the back of my head in those moments where I did pull back. As crazy as it sounds, he was a former Freemason, and he came on my channel as a UAP whistleblower. And when I started my podcast, I was like stories he used to tell me on the back porch. But when anybody else came out, he'd just be like, we're not talking about this, because it's like, everyone can like debate whether his stories are true or not. I believe them. And I've heard these stories for years and years, and they've always remained insanely consistent. But
now, UAPs, for everybody who don't know, are UFOs, previously known as UFOs. Keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing about my channel, is like, we'll be here and then we'll be here. But there was different UAP whistleblower protections put into place, and he felt as though he could come out and say these stories publicly. So I'm just like, yes, let's go. But he also, in reality, knew a lot about the underworld of Eugene and Portland. And as I started making some discoveries in my own personal investigations about cartel connections in relation to Antifa, he was one of the ones who backed me off, because he essentially knew what was happening. And he's like, you're going to get yourself killed, like, back off. But then along the way, his wife got arrested. She sold some drugs to a young man that overdosed and died.
Oh.
And he had been tinkering with the idea before, but he was like, look, you're doing what you're doing on your podcast. We're fighting for our country. I want these child predators out of my town. I know where they're trafficking kids. I can give the information to the feds if they'll just listen to me. And I was like, yeah, dude, let's go. So he was trying to do that in exchange for possibly getting some sort of medical care or slicing off of her sentencing. And I was like, hey, man, I'm here to facilitate it. I don't condone the fact that she sold drugs to this young man that overdosed and died. I am here for you. I'm here to be neutral. And if you want your story to be shared, let's do it. But simultaneously, he's somebody that gave me a lot of lessons on how to talk with these entities, how to walk through these different astral states, because I was doing a lot of psychedelics, and he was the older hippie guy next door he was also a part of the Masons. So he had a lot of esoteric knowledge and how I should communicate with these beings, handle these beings. So kind of like how I told you that that reptilian demon that I saw that night, and how it always perplexed me. We were starting to work together on it to try and understand it and to have more of these like esoteric alien type conversations on the channel. And things got very, very weird, because it's like I was saying, anytime you get around Larry, things just get weird and weird. But, we only saw each other twice, I think, in the entire time we did the podcast. One of them was actually my wedding. He was the minister at my husband and I's wedding. But he was getting severe levels of demonic attacks from things that he witnessed. There's just like me, he has a million horror stories that if anyone wants to listen, I'll let him tell it himself. I want to write down his story to help preserve it and immortalize it.
Yeah, we'll get you back. There we go.
Oh, did I leave?
Frozen again.
Oh no. And this is what happens anytime I start talking too deep about this. There's always technological disturbances. It's
I didn't even think about that.
No, so stuff like that would happen when we got too deep. We both started experiencing different entities in our house. Bear in mind, I was a pothead. I can't remember. I might have not been drinking at that time. But Larry, part of his story is he tried to commit suicide one night. What he claims is there was a hiring buzzing in his head. Something alive came alive on his phone on TikTok and told him to kill himself. But not only that, but if he killed himself, that his wife could come back and she could be happy with another man. He took a dab tool and he rammed it through his frontal cerebral cortex, which is something that caused more severe.
Wait, question from the audience. That was that poll thing you were telling?
Oh, you're cutting out.
We're back, and we're back. We're supposed to talk. I mean,
we're talking about demons. We're going to ruin the podcast, I feel, at this point.
This is interesting because you know what? Guess who wins that? We know. So he tried to commit suicide, but how did he try to do it?
A dab tool that you use for smoking oil dab, marijuana. He took it and he rammed it through his cornea and into his frontal cerebral cortex. And then not only that, but kept experiencing voices in his head. It didn't do the job. He tried to get a butcher knife and slice himself open. I think his son broke the blade, but he just had a whole psychological spiral.
Yeah, I do.
And that's something he was trying to heal from. That's why he wanted to come on the podcast. He's like, look, you've been working through your demons. You're doing it in the way that I taught you to work through your demons. Like, let's do it. And I said, okay, this is all going to be public. If we do this, it needs to be public. That way you can see what's happening. So that's how we operated it. But he seemingly became more and more possessed by these beings.
When you let him in, stuff happens.
And he'll tell you all about it and his hexes and his curses and his own blood rituals, which included slicing off pits of his own skin. But it got really, really bad. And it was almost like the closer and closer he came to telling the truth and exposing what was happening, the attacks got more and more severe. But even on my end, I was experiencing a lot of weird paranormal stuff that was happening simultaneously. I was having like voices in my head, seeing shadows. There was the UAP phenomena. I saw like the orange orbs outside of my house one night. That was interesting. And that was on a night where Larry mysteriously, I couldn't get a hold of him for one of our tapings. But after experiencing a lot of what happened with that story, which again, it's a super long saga.
Sure.
That brought me closer to God because that God and Christ were the only things that could get those things away from me. So I had an exorcism and it was...
Did you get like the Catholic priest comes out and does the whole nine?
I reached out to a woman. I found her on YouTube in the summer, and she's amazing. She wrote this book called "They Only Come Out at Night," and she talks a lot about shadow people and sleep paralysis and astral attacks and all that. And she's very much engaged in spiritual warfare. So I was talking to her about some things that were happening because I was like, I need help with this Larry situation. This is getting weird. Like, this is getting very, very weird.
Yeah.
Weird to the point where I had Freemasons coming to my work and asking me questions, like weird. So I had to talk to her and I'm just like, look, you're involved in this space. Like, what is happening? I feel like it kind of felt like there was a whistleblower targeting it kind of happening in terms of the things he was trying to present and also simultaneously things I was trying to present. Things started getting weirder on the channel as they started getting weirder in my dreams, as things were getting weirder in his home. Like, it was just all this stuff that wasn't making sense. So I reached out to Vicky. What was that?
Very dark.
Yeah. But she asked me if she could bring in a deliverance minister who had engaged in a lot of this. And they did a prayer with me. It was over Zoom, kind of like I'm doing with you now. It was nothing in person, though I hope to meet them in person one day. But they led me through a series of deliverance prayers to where I could see the entity again behind my eyes. And I could see it fighting with itself the more they did its prayers. I saw it gouging its eyes out. I saw clown imagery. And I think one thing that I saw was my mark of the beast, a sigil that enveloped me that this demon came out of. And it was like the more they prayed, it was just like there was this battle happening behind my eyes. That I really need to illustrate to kind of show people at some point because it's very, very insane. But
it's insane. Well, when you think what happens, I mean, I don't have any answers except I know this to be fact. When your ego is your God, bad things happen because You need to have somebody, you need to look out and help people and do other things because that's what we're called to do. So, yeah. So, are those episodes over now or what do you think?
Yep. After the prayer, because it started as a clown and it started as that entity.
Yeah.
But by the end, it turned into a snake with legs, which funnily enough looked just like the Miami Mall aliens that ran away after they came through the portals, for anyone familiar with that footage. And I remember just being like, what the fuck? Like, try not to swear because we're talking about God, but I'm just like, what the heck? But
scary.
Yeah. And it's like, sometimes I had a series of dreams to where I would go to this particular world, and the world it's an amalgamation of everywhere I've ever lived. It's kind of very Silent Hill like, and that's apparently a very common thing with people who've been experiencing these astral attacks, because it's important to know that as technology has progressed, forms of contact have progressed also. So I think there's a lot more manipulation in our minds happening than we believe.
How much of it is how much of this psychosis and stuff is brought on by the drugs you were taking? It sounds like you were taking, yeah, because
a lot.
Don't do drugs. Okay?
Don't do drugs.
Ty, don't do drugs.
Nope. I do a little Delta 8 now because it's legal in Texas, but that's it.
What is that? What is that? Delta
I guess
8?
it's weed, but it absorbs faster. It's all I got. That's what it is.
Hyper THC stuff or something. Well,
yeah, Texas is very rebellious. They're like, we can't have THC. Well, we'll change 1 or 2 molecules and we'll show Abbott.
But you describe yourself. You could describe yourself as a patriot and a conservative now, or what's your? Yeah, that's amazing. You voted for Trump.
Leaning, but I mean, I definitely voted for Trump. The more and more time goes on, especially the older I get, I'm becoming more conservative. I can see what people mean by that. Like, I don't look at abortion the same way. I'm kind of done with all the trans crap. Like, I'm tired of it. At first, it went from y'all push me into being a conservative, even though I'm a liberal. But then after years and years of watching what's been happening, it's like, no, actually, the conservatives make a lot of sense. The
conservatives are the liberals. I mean, they are. When I was a classical liberal all throughout my schooling and all that stuff, which is to say that I believe in civil rights and civil liberties and all of it. And now, of course, I'm a Nazi and a fascist. So, who knew? I didn't change.
That's one of the reasons I'm talking to like actual people on the far right now, because I'm like, look, we're different. We're different. Like, I love them, but we're different.
Yeah. So you've taken a turn to the right. Well, good for you. I mean, I think it's smart, actually, obviously.
Healthier. That's for sure.
Do you have a libertarian streak, though, too? Is that right? Or anarchist or libertarian-ish? Before.
I kind of see value to different sides in different situations. I know what a libertarian is, but I couldn't even honestly sit down and define it for you, because I think
they're going out of style anyway, so it hardly matters. But I would just say that they sort of a live and let live bunch of folks, and they believe in free drugs and all sorts of stuff. But I mean, that's kind of
like, I'm falling off a lot of that. It's just like, maybe it's good that police are actually doing their jobs. Maybe we don't need all these drugs in the streets all the time. Maybe it isn't your choice whether your child should transition. Sorry.
Yeah, no, conserve the family unit, and they're trying to destroy it, and that's one of the reasons why Antifa's on the streets. It's why the left is so dark. They want to get rid of all that is encompassed and venerated by the people on the right, but also held up in the Bible. I mean, that's true. It's absolutely true. Well, Ty Wood, thank you. I'm sorry I called you Ty Wood, because you have one of your names is that, but Ty King, thank you. Triple B Collective. Thank you so much for watching and listening to this episode of the Adult in the Room podcast. We do not take you for granted. We appreciate every single person who tunes in every week to listen and watch this program. We're here every Tuesday and Thursday, live streaming on Rumble, and then on every other podcast platform shortly thereafter, when we can port it over and get it over there as soon as we can. All the shows can be found at victoriataft.com, where the censorship regime has been banned by me. Follow me on social media at these names: Victoria Taft, the Adult in the Room podcast, and The Victoria Taft Show. Send media inquiries, or any others for that matter, to victoria@victoriataft.com. And here's a big ask. Would you please subscribe, share, like, comment, recommend, and give this program a 5-star rating where you can? We really appreciate it. We do not take that for granted either. Follow my work at, you guessed it, victoriataft.com. PJ Media, I write tons over there. Flamingo Audiobooks, and of course the radio. I don't do this alone. This show is produced and engineered by Overall Media. 1A Cast is responsible for some of the Adult in the Room podcast's imaging. Logo design by Hageman Creative. The Adult in the Room podcast is produced at Flamingo Road Studios. All rights reserved.